write it right in the Q&A or the messenger box, and we'll answer them at the appropriate time. Okay. So let's welcome Ann Murdy, artist, author. On the Path of Marigolds received the Gold Award with the Foreward INDIES Book Awards for the Best Book of the Year in 2019 in the category of Adult Nonfiction, Multicultural, and received the 2020 Honorable Mention with the International Latino Book Awards in the Art category. You can purchase copies from local bookstores like Collected Works. While the Museum of International Folk Art gift shop is closed, you can purchase it at Museum of New Mexico Foundation's website. You may find it from other vendors by searching the book online. Just search the web for Ann Murdy on the Path of Marigolds, and you may check it out from your public library. Photographer Ann Murdy has been documenting the celebrations around Dia de los Muertos in Mexico for more than 20 years. A native of Los Angeles, she first started collecting Chicano art in the 1990s and was drawn to Mexico by the vibrancy of its culture and traditions. She loved the rich colors she found everywhere, such as the flowers adorning the ofrendas or altars to the dead, to the dusky yellow of the marigolds lining pathways leading to the ofrendas in both private homes and cemeteries. Please welcome Ann Murdy as she takes us on the Path of the Marigolds. Thank you so much, Ann.
Okay, I can share the screen now?
Yes, go for it.
Okay, here we go. Okay, so can we get rid of the two of you on the side before we start, or not?
Jessica, if you turn your video off, you should not be able to, nobody can see it.
Okay, so you can see a full screen and just me in the top? Can you hear me?
Yes. And
Yes.
speak up a little bit, Ann.
Okay, let's get started. So I want to thank everybody who's here tonight to enjoy this presentation of the history of Day of the Dead and talk about my book on the Path of Marigolds. So I thank all of you who are attending, and I also would like to thank the Santa Fe Public Library for giving me this opportunity to speak about the celebration of life known as Day of the Dead or Dia de los Muertos. This joyous celebration takes place on All Saints Day, November 1st, and All Souls Day, November 2nd. In some communities in Mexico, All Saints Day is when the spirits of the children return. They are known as angelitos, little angels. All Souls Day is when the spirits of the adults return. They are known as defuntos, the deceased. It is a time families in Mexico honor and celebrate the lives of those who are no longer with us by constructing home altars or ofrendas in their memory and visiting their graves. An altar brings a loved one back to life. Families place what that individual enjoyed eating or drinking in their life on the altar. Additionally, ofrendas include mementos, a photo of the individual, a glass of water, along with pan de muerto, Day of the Dead bread. The altars are adorned with yellow-orange marigold flowers whose potent scent helps guide the spirits back to the home. A pathway of marigold petals is sprinkled from the outside of the home to the foot of the altar. This pathway and candles on the altar also aids in guiding the souls back to the home. Sweet-smelling copal and incense-like resin is burned to aid in the communication of the spirits. In some states, such as Oaxaca, the altar has a marigold arch known as an arco. This arch is the passageway from the land of the dead to the land of the living. Altars vary from community to community. In some communities, the altar is made up of 3 tiers, one for birth, life, and death. The glass of water is placed on the water to quench the thirst of the soul as it has traveled a long way to return to earth. It is believed the spirits take the essence of the food and the living eat it afterwards. For myself, building an altar aids in the grieving process as it is cathartic, meditative, and it creates a sense of peace. An altar is also a magnet that draws the soul of the deceased from the land of the dead to the land of the living. It brings the individual back to life during the time it is in the home. People in Mexico decorate the graves at the cemeteries with flowers, food, and candles. It is a joyous fiesta that is full of life. In some communities, the families spend the entire night with their loved ones. Sometimes the family will even hire a mariachi band to serenade the dead with their favorite songs. It is the complete opposite of visiting a cemetery in the United States, as a tombstone only states the day the person was born, the day they died, and perhaps a few words. So now I'm going to show you some photographs illustrating how people decorate their graves and how they decorate the altars. So my book features 3 communities: Wackachula, Puebla, Teotitlán del Valle, and the communities around Lake Pasquoro. So this is an altar for an angelito from Teotitlán del Valle. This is the cemetery in Wackachula. This is another decorated grave along the lake in Potswara, Michoacán. This is an altar viejo from Wackachula. This is a home altar for an adult that died in the Purépecha community of Santa Fe de Laguna. This is the cemetery in Santa Fe de Laguna. Once again, Santa Fe Laguna is in Michoacán. This is a decorated tomb in Teotitlán del Valle. This is a mariachi musician serenading a loved one's grave in Teotitlán del Valle. This is a beautiful ofrenda from Teotitlán del Valle. This is the Path of Marigolds. And this is where that Path of Marigold ended up, at the foot of this altar for a child that died in Wackachula. In 2017, I decided to create a book featuring my photos on how Day of the Dead is celebrated in rural communities in Mexico. I was concerned that popular culture was becoming more important than authentic culture. Here in the United States, this beautiful tradition seemed to be evolving into a Mexican version of Halloween. Also, the popular animated Disney Pixar film Coco, set in one of the villages I visited, had a huge influence on the celebration in Mexico. Since 1991, I have been documenting how Day of the Dead is celebrated, and it has become increasingly commercialized. Here in the United States, Mattel has come out with a Day of the Dead Barbie doll for the last 2 years. It sold out immediately at the retail price of $75. Kellogg's came out with a Day of the Dead cereal that is only being sold in Mexico. On October 15th, Nike announced their new line of Air Jordan sneakers dedicated to Day of the Dead. The 3-color scheme, according to the press release, is deeply rooted in the colors of the traditional floral ofrendas, the deep color yellow, the marigold, and the magenta color of Cresta de Gallo. On the side, toward the front of the shoe, Familia is inscribed. Nike said this inscription is to remind us what Day of the Dead is all about. The animated movie Coco was released in Mexico on October 27, 2017. It opened in wide release in the United States about a month later. The movie revolves around 2 main characters, a young boy named Miguel and his great-grandmother, Mama Coco, who both live in the village of Santa Cecilia. His village was based on the Purépecha community of Santa Fe Laguna, founded in 1533 on the north shore of Lake Pasquoro. It is known for its pottery. I documented this village in 2017 and 2018. I was there on both October 31st and November 1st. In 2017, on November 1st, it was relatively peaceful until I left at 9 p.m. when the tourist buses arrived. In 2018, on November 1st, it was packed with huge amounts of tourist buses when I arrived at 6:30 p.m. It was now a major tourist attraction. It took on a Disneyland transformation. On October 31st, young girls dressed in their indigenous clothing had half of their faces painted as calaveras or skeletons. A market was set up on the plaza, selling plaster statues of Mama Coco and Miguel made in China. Small children were running around the streets carrying plastic pumpkins, yelling trick or treat. Even one of the directors of COCO was in town on November 1st. None of this is a part of their authentic indigenous culture. Prior to the release of COCO, the people in this village always went to their cemetery at 3 o'clock in the afternoon on November 2nd. In 2018, the tourists were so upset no one was in their cemetery on November 1st. Santa Fe de Laguna changed their long-standing tradition to have people in the cemetery on November 1st to accommodate the tourists last year. Mama Coco is based on a real woman who lives in Santa Fe de Laguna. Her name is Maria Salud Ramirez Caballero, who was 107 years old. In 2019, the tourists stood in line on November 1st to go inside their house, to meet her and take selfies. Inside her home, she sat in front of an oversized statue, an oversized poster from Coco, and sold Coco merchandise that was available for purchase. So now I'm going to show you images of how Day of the Dead has been commercialized. Here we have expats in San Miguel de Allende painted up as calaveras, and this is not something that indigenous people do not do. Here's the Mattel Barbie doll that came out this year and sold out immediately. Here's the Mattel Barbie doll that sold out last year. Here's the Pan de Muertos cereal that's being sold by Kellogg's in Mexico at the moment. Here is the Nike Air Jordan dedicated to Day of the Dead. This is what I saw in Santa Fe de Laguna 2 years ago. These little girls all painted up as skeletons. And it says here's the house of Mama Coco, the new tourist destination in Santa Fe de Laguna. And here is Mama Coco holding court with all the people. One cannot control change. Of course, the government of Mexico loves the increase in tourism because everybody makes more money. The hotels, restaurants, retail shops, folk artists, cab drivers, bus companies, etc. To capitalize on the success of COCO, the prior administration of President Enrique Peña Nieto had his Secretary of Tourism change the name of Day of the Dead to La Ruta de Coco, the route of Coco. The route of Coco is comprised of the states of Michoacán, Guanajuato, Aguascalientes, and Oaxaca. Tourism in Michoacán increased by 57.4% from 2014 through 2018. In 2018, Airbnb in Potswara reported that it received 114% more tourists compared to 2017. Last year, the state of Michoacán expected to receive 200,000 domestic and foreign tourists. I am thankful I was able to document how Day of the Dead was celebrated before La Ruta de Coco became a part of popular culture. For myself, I am doubtful that many communities will opt out toward pleasing tourists after the release of COCO because of the additional income it provides. My book is a testament to traditions that are authentic in 3 rural communities of Mexico. For myself, Day of the Dead is one of the most beautiful experiences I have witnessed in my life. Entering the cemeteries at night, which are only lit by candlelight, is a magical moment. I am walking on sacred ground, surrounded by a sense of community, which is tranquil, soulful, and heartfelt. It is an ethereal experience. Traveling to Mexico has changed my perception on death and dying. I have learned that as long as we honor our loved ones in this manner, they will live forever. So now I would like to discuss how these celebrations take place in Wackachula, Puebla, Teotihuacan del Valle, Oaxaca, and the communities around Lake Pasquoro. And the image that you're looking at right now was taken in San Pedro Cucacuchu, which is one of the lakeside communities along Lake Pasquoro. So let's go to Wackachula. The first community in my book is the Nahua community of Wackachula, Puebla, which is known for its white satin monumental altars. Todos Santos, All Saints, which has existed since 1540, is celebrated from October 28th through November 2nd. These are the most important altars in the state of Oaxaca. The color white represents the purity of the soul. Okay, hang on a second. Wackachula is located about 45 minutes southwest of the city of Puebla. 3,000 people live in this village. An individual only receives a monumental altar the first year they pass away. After that, they receive a simple altar, which is known as an altar viejo, which means an old altar. Most of these altars are a table with photos, food, drinks, flowers, candles, and photos of the saints. On October 28th, the souls return that died in accidents, suicide, or by acts of aggression. On October 31st, the souls of the children return up to the age of 18. Everyone else returns on November 1st. At 2 o'clock in the afternoon on all the above dates, the church bells begin to ring, announcing the souls have returned to earth. Just minutes before this happens, the doors to the homes open up and families gather outside of the house. A family member who was directly related to the individual who passed away carries a large incense burner full of copal. Another person carries a bucket of marigold petals and sprinkles a path from the outside of the house where it ends up at the foot of the altar inside the home. Copal is burned over the altar and the candles are lit. When visiting these homes, you bring a candle to add to the altar. Visitors are taken to an outdoor patio where they are served chicken mole over rice, bean tamales, along with a refreshing glass of agua de Jamaica, agua de tamarindo, or hot chocolate. So I just want to pose here for those of you who may not be familiar with Day of the Dead in Puebla. This is the state of Puebla, and I'm going to use my pointer. Here is Puebla City, and straight down is Wackachula. So this is a monumental altar. Most people are not really aware of this tradition because it hasn't been publicized as much as the customs in, say, Oaxaca and in Michoacan. So I want to talk about these altars. They're very symbolic. So a monumental altar has 3 tiers. The first or lower tier represents life on earth for the deceased. It is made up of pleated white satin. This level is known as the Underworld. The photo of the deceased is placed on this level. It can only be seen, it can only be viewed indirectly with a mirror. The mirror represents the underworld, symbolizing that this person is no longer on earth. Pan de muerto, food, beverages, and a glass of water are placed on this level. Plaster statues of angels called rorencitos, little ones who cry, are on this level too. Candles are placed here to give light to the darkness. 12 paper angels are placed on the 3 tiers, representing each month of the year. There are also sugar figures known as alfinique placed on this tier as well. So this is considered the first tier. And this is the mirror. And there you can see the photograph of the person who passed away. Here's one of the statues of the little figures that cry. And so this is a very important tier. This is where you put all the food that the deceased loved to eat in their lifetime. The second tier represents the union of heaven and earth. This is the second tier. It also represents the human and the divine. A saint or virgin are added to this tier. Baroque columns support each tier. The white satin fabric is arranged in whimsical folds to resemble clouds. It is stapled into place. The third tier, which is right up here, has a cross on it if an adult has died. This level of the altar represents the divine, the celestial apex in communication with God. On October 31st, Wackachula celebrates the Plaza Grande. This is a market dedicated to Todos Santos on the Zocalo. It only happens once a year. People from neighboring towns come the night before and set up their stalls. One can purchase candied fruit, flowers, alfinique, a sugar paste, they're little sugar paste animals, chocolate, pan de muerto, fruit, copal incense, polychrome pottery such as candlestick holders, incense burners, cooking utensils, decorative candles, tinwork, and flowers made from fabric known as ramos de flores. Early on the morning of November 2nd, the families go to the two cemeteries in town, La Trinidad or Santa Maria. The graves are decorated with gladiolas, daisies, marigolds, magenta, cresta de gallo, chrysanthemums, bay leaves, and rosemary. Copal is burned over the tombs. After the graves are decorated, the families return home for breakfast. At noon on November 2nd, families open up their homes again to visitors that have come to Wackachula to visit the Monumental Altar. So now let's look at some photos from Wackachula. So this is an altar viejo. This is what you would get the year after you had a monumental altar. This is a very classic monumental altar. They're very difficult to construct. And here's that first tier with the mirror where you can see the reflection of the person that passed away and the little statues of the angels that cry. This is an altar dedicated to a couple that died in a car wreck, so their life was celebrated on the 28th. This is an altar to a man who was murdered, and so his life was celebrated on the 20th as well. This is an altar to a little baby that died. And I'm just going to pause here for a second. This was an altar dedicated to a little girl that died, and I want you to notice how they placed her clothes on the bottom tier. You can see her little dresses on either side and the little shoes. It was really incredibly beautiful. And her grandfather is a major altar builder in Wackachula. His name is Eugenio Reyes, and he has actually built altars in London and in Canada. So this altar he built for his granddaughter. Here the ladies are shredding the marigold flowers to make the petals so they can create the pathway. And here you can see that pathway going to an altar in this home. This was an altar for a school teacher that passed away. This altar was taken right at 2 o'clock, and that's when they burn the copal and light the candles. And this one was taken almost at the same time. This was an altar viejo. This is a monumental altar dedicated to an adult that died. This is another altar viejo. You can see they're completely different than the monumental altars. They're much simpler. This is an altar to a man who died in a car accident. This is another altar, very unique in its style. It's kind of looks like a church. And here's the Plaza Grande, the big market that happens on the Zocalo on the 31st of October. Here's a lady buying her pan de muerto. There's actually 4 different types of bread they use in Wackachula for their altars. Here's another flower vendor. This is the alfinique. I have never seen this type of sugar work except in Wackachula in my travels to Mexico. This is the entrance to the cemetery, Santa Maria. Here are mariachi musicians serenading the tomb of somebody who passed away. And here they are decorating the graves in the cemetery in Santa Maria as well. Teotitlan del Valle is an indigenous Zapotec village that is located about 40 miles southeast of the city of Oaxaca. Around 5,600 people live here. The village is known for its rug weaving. La Festividad de los Muertos, the Festival of the Dead, has existed since pre-Columbian times. The people in this village celebrate the lives of their loved ones beginning at 3 o'clock in the afternoon on November 1st, when bottle rockets are shut off into the air, and the church bells ring nonstop for the next 24 hours. This ritual concludes with another round of bottle rockets on November 2nd. On November 1st, all the doors of the homes open up at 3 o'clock in the afternoon. Candles are lit on the altar, and copal incense is burned to bless the altar. Families walk from house to house, bringing a candle and pan de muerto to add to the altar. These visitations can last as long as late as 2 o'clock in the morning. When visiting a home in Teotitlan del Valle, the host will greet you and invite you to sit down at a long table to partake in the fiesta, which is perpendicular to the altar. They will offer you a plate of pan de muerto, hot chocolate, mezcal, or beer. Upon leaving, they will give you food, fruit, and nuts from the altar to take home with you. October 31st is a day full of activity in the village. On this day, villagers fled the market to buy items needed for the market. The market is full of flowers such as marigolds, cresta de gallo, and the lavender flor de muerto. Inside the market, there are stacks upon stacks of various pan de muerto being sold. In the outdoor area, the market people are busy purchasing apples, oranges, jicama, bananas, cacao for making hot chocolate, peanuts, pecans, candles, copal, and bamboo to form a arco over the altar. The bamboo arch is the passageway for the spirit to leave the world of the dead and enter the world of the living. After returning from the market, the women get busy by making food and drink to put on the altar. There are tamales made especially for this time of year, which are filled with chicken and covered with an orange-red sauce made from chiles guajillo, masa, yerba santo, and chicken soup. They are wrapped in corn husks before they are steamed in an olla pot. Women also prepare tejate, a refreshing corn drink made from cacao and maize, and hot chocolate. Once the church bells stop ringing at 3 o'clock on November 2nd, the villagers slowly make their way to the cemetery. Inside the cemetery, there's a small capilla, or a chapel. It is filled with the sound of men known as rezadores, literally men who perform songs of prayer, kneeling on the ground and singing a cappella. These men have the most unusual voices that produce a strong, piercing melody, rich in tonality, filled with sadness and lament. Outside in the cemetery, the mood is more upbeat and festive as families are reflecting on the lives of their loved ones as they keep vigil by the graves. There are mariachi musicians that serenade the dead. Now, they do stay in the cemetery for a while in the evening. I've never really spent that much time in the cemetery because they don't use tapers, and so they only use votive candles, so it's much harder to take photographs. But I have probably stayed in the cemetery to about 9 or 10, and people are just partying and having a great time. So let's look at photographs of La Festividad de los Muertos from Teotitlán del Valle. So let me just pause here. So for those of you who haven't ever been to Oaxaca, you can see the red pin drop, which is Oaxaca City, and to the far right is Teotitlán del Valle. This photograph was taken right at 3 o'clock when the church bell started ringing. The lady is lighting the candle for the altar. This couple is Alberto and Gloria. They are making their home altar. This photograph is taken in the home of my friend Donnie Zach, and the couple are bringing bread for the altar and bringing a candle. This is another beautiful altar. The Virgin of Our Lady of Guadalupe is very popular in this village. This is an altar for a person who just passed away. That's why you see the 2 sand paintings in front of the altar. This is another altar with Our Lady of Guadalupe as well. This altar, I think, is hysterical. I love that the angel has a big pan de muerto on top of the head. Another really beautiful altar with Our Lady of Guadalupe. Another altar, Our Lady of Guadalupe is in the far right, and Santos are on the right. Here's the market with the woman selling tons and tons of pan de muerto. Here's a flower vendor in the outdoor area of the market. These women here are holding the cresta de gallo. It looks like they're trying to buy some more. Here is the lady in the foreground is holding the lavender flor de muerto, which is a very traditional flower in that village. This is Marcelina, and she is making hot chocolate. This is Petra, and she's putting around the corn husk for the tamale. This is Antoinetta, and she is making tejate. And this is Irene, and she's putting the corn husk around her tamale. And this lady is taking all the tamales out of the olla pot that are ready. So here's a couple putting the finishing touches on their tomb in the cemetery in Teotitlán del Valle. This photograph I love, the woman drinking the beer and the guy playing the trumpet. I think it's hysterical. It's very joyous. And here's like an outdoor scene of the cemetery. It's like being in a florist shop. It's just beautiful, and the smell of the flowers is fabulous. Here are the rezadores singing to take the souls back to the land of the dead. And here's a woman having a private moment in the cemetery. So now we're going to go to Lake Potswara in the state of Michoacan. In the state of Michoacan along Lake Pasquoro, the indigenous Purépecha people celebrate La Noche de Animas, the Night of the Souls, on November 1st. Little is known about the pre-Hispanic traditions due to the fact that when the Spanish arrived in Michoacan in 1530, they destroyed most of their codices. The primary document that's still in existence is by Fray Martín de Jesus from 1540. There is no discussion on the afterlife in his writings. It is believed the afterlife was similar to life on earth because the soul lingered near the home before it started the journey to the other side. Today, the celebration is a private affair with the family. The preparation of the altars in many of the lakeside communities starts on October 30th. Wild bamboo is used for the rectangular frames that decorate the graves and the home altars. Inside the frames are designs of crosses, hearts, fruits such as apples, oranges, bananas, bread in the shape of souls, figures of animals made from sugar and candies. The food represents the bounty of the heavens. Typical foods prepared during this time of the year are pozole, casseroles of rice, plates of beans, enchiladas, fruits, pumpkin cooked with sugar, along with bowls of candies and chocolates. Liquid refreshments can consist of Coca-Cola, beer, pulque, an alcoholic beverage made from the fermented sap of the maguey plant, atole, a hot corn drink with vanilla and sugar, and tequila. The bamboo frames are covered with hundreds of marigolds until the green color of the bamboo can no longer be seen. A straw mat on the floor becomes a mountain of fruit. On November 1st, these frames are taken from the homes and placed on the grave if this was the first year the individual passed away in certain communities. These rectangular frames show the four elements of nature: earth, the aroma of food; wind, a moving object such as papel picado; water, a glass of water for the returning soul; and fire, wax candles. Salt is placed on the altar for purification. The straw mat placed in front of the altar is for the soul to rest. Most communities around Lake Pasquoro visit the graves on the evening of November 1st. Families spend the entire night in the cemetery. The most popular cemetery around the lake is Zinzunzan. Here one can see elaborate floral decorations such as three-dimensional floral sculptures and two-dimensional murals made from flowers as well. In the Purépecha village of Santa Fe de Laguna, the doors of the homes open at 6 o'clock on the evenings of October 31st and November 1st, only for the people who died that year. The lives of the children are honored on the 31st, whereas the lives of the adults are honored on November 1st. There is a marigold arch over the front door of the homes where there has been a death that year. A path of marigold petals from the street winds its way to the foot of the altar inside the home. Upon entering the home, visitors present the hostess with a basket of fruit and a candle for the altar. A straw mat in front of the altar becomes a mountain of fruit made up of bananas, apples, and oranges. Atole and pozole are served to the visitors. In the past, the visitors would visit the cemetery on November 2nd at 3 o'clock in the afternoon. People spent the afternoon decorating their graves and listening to mass held in the cemetery to honor the lives of those that died that year. So now we're going to look at photos from the communities around Lake Pasquoro. So let me just pause again so you can see this map. So there's quite a few communities around the lake. I've actually taken photographs in 9 of the communities. It could not be done in 1 year. It's simply impossible because this is really a one-night event. But you can go during the day on the 1st and see them decorating the graves, and the people are still in the cemetery the next day on the 2nd. So at the top of the map here is Santa Fe Laguna, which was the inspiration for Miguel's village in the movie Coco. Dropping straight down is Zinzunzan, which is the place that's very popular because of how beautiful the graves are decorated. I also like the communities of Iguazio and San Pedro Cucacuchu. I've been to some communities to the south, to the west, and I've actually gone to 2 communities on the lake. I've been to Pacanda and I've been to Janitzio. But there's a lot to see in around the lake during this time of year. So this is in Zinzunzan. This is taken the afternoon of the November 1st. This was another community around the lake. It was actually taken on the 2nd of November. So you can still see the graves on the 2nd. This once again was in Zinzunzan. This is a home altar in Santa Fe de Laguna. I have never seen marigolds used so profusely as I have in Santa Fe Laguna. This is a woman who's a cantadora. She's actually reciting the rosary for the spirit that is returning. I love this home altar in Santa Fe Laguna with the woman's clothes on the wall. This is another home altar in Santa Fe de Laguna for a man that passed away. And you can see how the fruit grows. I'm sure by the end of the night, it might be up to the top of the cross. This is another home altar for a man that died in Santa Fe Laguna. I love how they strung the marigolds. Very beautiful. This is on the island of Janitzio. They have a ceremony for children on early in the morning on November 1st. We're back in Zinzunzan. I love how they did the floral mural to match the guy's portrait. This is in Zinzunzan as well. This is really sweet, the little boy on his pony. This was taken in Iguazio. This is a detail of those arches or the rectangular squares. This is taken in Iguazio at dawn. You can see the people are asleep at the grave. This was taken on the island of Picanda. This has probably been the most magical place I've gone to. Once again, we're in Zinzunzan. This is on the island of Picanda too. It was just magical. This is another lakeside community on the west side of the lake. This is Zinzunzan at dawn. And this is the cover of my book, which was taken in Iguazio at dawn. This will be my final commentary on how tourism is affecting authentic culture. The influence of popular culture has been an issue ever since I went to Oaxaca in 1991, when I saw the school children in Halloween costumes, dressed as vampires, witches, and ghosts. I've seen the Halloween colors of orange and black incorporated into home altars and papel picados. Both foreign and Mexican tourists have become increasingly disrespectful over the years, showing up in the cemeteries painted as calaveras and taking selfies of themselves while families are trying to have a peaceful reunion with their loved ones. I'm a tourist too. However, I have always been respectful. I received permission to take photos in all the homes. I never posed anyone. I have been horrified by tourists showing up in the homes, not asking permission to take photos, setting up lights when prayers were being said without asking permission, and not bringing an offering for the altar. Day of the Dead is a sacred and spiritual ritual where we honor our loved ones. It is not a Disneyland attraction. How would we like to be at a memorial service for our loved ones when a group of tourists showed up with painted faces and started taking selfies? I'm doubtful the situation will improve, which saddens me. What we have here is a double-edged sword. Anthropologist Stanley Brandis, who holds a PhD from UC Berkeley, also shares his concern about the impact of tourism and ritual change from his book published in 2007, titled Skulls to the Living, Bread to the Dead, Day of the Dead in Mexico and Beyond. In closing, I am thankful for the opportunity to document this beautiful celebration of life for 27 years. As I was given permission to take photos in the homes, I made sure all the families received prints of their altars as a gift of gratitude. I believe it's important to give back to the community. Witnessing and experiencing this joyous manner of honoring our dead has enriched my life. I am grateful for all these experiences and to partake in the spirit of Mexico. Thank you so much. And that concludes my presentation.
Thank you so much, Ann. It's so beautiful. You're so generous to share all of that with us. I think now we have David Pike says, wonderful presentation, thank you. If anybody has any questions they'd like to ask, feel free to write it in either of the chat boxes here. Luis asks, will this presentation be available after tonight? Yes, we have been recording and it will be on the Santa Fe Public Library YouTube channel. And everyone's saying bravo. Loving you. Denise Chavez here, loving you. Thank you. Very beautiful photos.
Thank you, Denise. Thank you for writing your beautiful, beautiful essay. If you have not bought my book, you have got to read the essay that Denise wrote. Made me cry. It was so beautiful. She really understands that this is a spiritual celebration of life. I love you, Denise.
Carmen Rodriguez asks, is it expensive to go to these locations? Is there a fee?
No, there isn't a fee to go to any of these places. You can take collectivos, you can take a taxi. For myself personally, since I'm a photographer, lighting is critical to me. So I always hire a driver and I just have him wait. He just parks on the side of the road and I tell him I'm going to go into the cemetery and take photos, and I pay him to wait in the car. You do not want to be stranded when you go to these places because sometimes you cannot find any transportation back. So collectivos are a way to get around, but they're very, very crowded. Or you can go but on a tour. It just depends. Tours tend to be a lot more expensive because you have to pay for all the expenses. Personally, I just go on my own, and I have good people that have given me around for years, and they help me accomplish what I need to do.
We have a few other questions, Anne, and a lot of really wonderful comments. Everyone's saying wonderful presentation. Thank you for sharing. Beautiful photos. So the first question I'm going to ask is from Kitty Leakin. The images are joyous and sad. They're about celebration and ceremony. Can you talk about these seeming contradictions?
You mean in terms of the commercialism?
I think just that the images are so joyous, and although I guess it's a sad event, maybe?
No, not really. I mean, the photo you're looking at now, the people are like deep in thought. I have never seen anybody crying in any of these communities that I've gone to. Um, they're playing mariachi music. People are drinking, they're eating, they're feasting. It's like a fiesta in a cemetery. It can be a little more solemn, maybe in the homes when they visit the homes, but most of the time, people are upbeat. They're reminiscing about the life of the person who passed away. It's a time of memory. It's a time to cherish that person's life. So I have really I have never seen anybody break down and cry in the cemeteries nor in the homes. People usually seem to be in a fairly upbeat mood. But it is a moment of meditation. So it is serious. It's not a game. That's why it makes me very upset that you have all these tourists going in there think it's some Disneyland attraction and they're disrespectful. I mean, these people are there. They're there the whole night. I mean, how many people would stay in a cemetery the whole night long and sometimes they fall asleep by the grave. So it is a time, it is serious. It is serious in nature, but they are there to honor their loved ones.
The next question is, do the visitors eat the food off of the altars?
Yes, in Teotitlán del Valle, when you visit, when you leave, they will take food off the altar and they will usually give you pan de muerto, they'll give you some hot chocolate, they'll give you fruit, they'll nuts. So they give you food from the altar for you to take home. So it's a really wonderful tradition in that village. I have not seen that tradition exist in Wackachula, and I did not see that in Santa Fe de Laguna, but in Wackachula and in Teotitlán del Valle, when you go to visit the altars, they always feed you. They feed you, like I said, they feed you in Wackachula, they feed you in Teotitlán del Valle. They want you to partake in the fiesta. And so it's these people are very generous because they don't know you at all. And here they welcome into your home. You're a total stranger. and they want you to celebrate and drink and eat and be that happy with them.
That's beautiful. I love that.
I mean, do you think if a bunch of tourists came to Santa Fe, they would open up their homes and let us come in for Christmas?
No.
Mexicans are very warm and generous people. They're lovely people.
It's so cool. Susan asks, did I miss you mention sugar skulls specifically as part of the rituals?
Sugar skulls are sold in Oaxaca City. You can go to the markets and buy sugar skulls. They will use them to decorate their altars. Sometimes they put them on the graves. In Potswara, in the town of Potswara, they have there's the Plaza Grande, and one side of the portal they have tons of sugar skulls that are for sale. And so sometimes people will use them on the graves. Sometimes they'll put them on the altars. They weren't really predominant in these photographs. And in Wackachula, they do not make sugar skulls. They make those little sheep that are called alfinique. But they do make little ducks. They make ducks and little animals, but they're not into sugar skulls in Wackachula. No, you don't see them there.
Sarah asks, may I know what the 3-level tiers are called again?
Okay, so altars vary from community to community, but in Oaxaca City, the 3 tiers that you see in like markets and in restaurants, those 3 tiers represent birth, life, and death.
In review, what do the different colors symbolize?
There's really no symbolism behind the colors. The marigold flower has always been the traditional flower of the dead since pre-Columbian times, since it died very quickly. So the marigold flower is a predominant flower of Day of the Dead. And why they started using the Cresta de Gallo, which is the magenta flower, I don't know. But those are 2 of the most widely used flowers for decorating graves and altars in Mexico throughout all the places I have visited.
Susie asks, did you travel alone?
Yes. For what I'm doing, I have to be very focused. My boyfriend has gone with me. He went with me 1 year to Teotihuacan del Valle, and another year he went with me out to Lake Pasquoro. But being a photographer, he would get kind of bored because I would, you have to have a lot of patience to be a photographer. You have to wait for that moment. And so if you're not a photographer, you might get kind of bored. So I found traveling by myself works better because I can set my own agenda and I can work at my own pace, and I don't have to worry about somebody getting bored or wanting to go back to the room. So it works. I'm very comfortable traveling by myself.
That's awesome. Mary asks, are you still going to Mexico to continue your documentations of the celebration?
Probably not. Last year I couldn't go because I had 5 events to do to promote my book. Of course, this year, most of the events have been canceled. Oaxaca City has canceled all of their events. They're not going to let people into the cemeteries. All the islands on Lake Pasquaro, they have been completely closed. And actually, in the state of Michoacan, they're asking people to stay home. They don't want tourists coming this year. And I have heard, I don't know if it's true or false, but I heard that Teotihuacan del Valle right now is closed off to visitors. I would assume that the people will still do altars in their homes to remember their dead. But in terms of people coming this year, they really don't want people there because of the pandemic. And personally, I really feel I have completed this project. I have been working on this since 1991 through 2018. And I don't want to go back to Michoacan. It was terrible in 2018. You do not know how the difference. I call it before Coco. I call it BC and AC. Before Coco and after Coco. It was terrible. It was just so crowded. What the movie Coco did to change tourism was really shocking. I mean, I knew the movie would get people interested in going to Mexico for Day of the Dead, but I didn't expect the change to be that great. It was just a mob scene, and when you look at these photos, it looks pretty calm. And so it's pretty hard to capture that because you don't want a bunch of tourists walking around in the photographs.
Yeah. I would have never thought it would change so much from that film, but it does. You already answered this question. Do you think Dia de los Muertos will continue this year with the pandemic going on? You said they're not allowing in cemeteries, and
They really don't want tourists there.
yeah.
It'll be interesting. I have contacts and I will contact them and after Day of the Dead is over and see what happened because I'm curious to see if it'll be really crowded with tourists this year, but they really don't want tourists coming to Mexico.
Mm-hmm. Rosalie says, thank you for representing Americans in such a respectful way and for documenting so beautifully. Robert asks, are you aware of any evidence that the customs and traditions you documented found their way intact into what is now New Mexico?
New Mexico doesn't really celebrate Day of the Dead. When I moved here from Los Angeles, I was very involved with self-help graphics when I lived in Los Angeles, which is a Chicano art organization. And Day of the Dead is a much bigger deal in Los Angeles and San Francisco. And I was told that when I moved here, that I would find out that people didn't like Mexicans, which seemed kind of strange to me. But there really aren't any major Day of the Dead events here like there are in Los Angeles. I mean, Los Angeles, it's a really big deal, but they once again have all been canceled this year as well.
Dorothy asks, there seems to be an overtone of exhibitionism in the home altars. Is there a flavor of competitiveness among the neighbors?
No, we're not built to be competitive. No. Although it's really sad, there's a village in Oaxaca called San Antonino. It's near Ocatlan, and they unfortunately have started a grave decorating concurso, which is really unfortunate because decorating a grave, you're not supposed to be in competition with others. But that's another thing to draw tourism. Let's have a great, grave decorating contest, and they even have a contest for who can grow the biggest crested gallo, which is the big magenta flower. And that did not exist when I first started going to Oaxaca in the 1990s. But like I said, things change and you cannot control change.
Yeah. How do the celebrations tend to end? You mentioned some people singing a special song to return the spirits.
Well, that's in Teotitlán del Valle. There's the men, the rezadores. They sing the songs a cappella to send the souls off to the other side. Basically, in the communities around Lake Pasquoro, the next morning, they will share the food with the neighbors of the tomb next to them. I know one morning when I was in Iwat, I went to another, after I took this photograph, I went to another village called San Pedro Cucucuchu, but the lighting was already gone. It was morning, and so I wasn't able to get this magical lighting. But the lady, she gave me some bread from the altar. So they share everything with you. So it's a time to share with one another. People are very kind and generous.
Is there a set time when the altars are taken down?
They usually will come down a couple days after. They usually come down on the 3rd. It's very interesting. Wackachula has a different custom. Those altars stay up until it's the 1-year anniversary of the person that died. So that's very different than what you would see in Michoacan and in Oaxaca.
Yeah. They said, this is from a 9-year-old, Jane Gus. Did you take every photo?
Yes, I did.
What
not,
do you...
not the ones of the commercialization, like the bar.
Oh, sure.
Nike shoes. But all the photographs taken in the villages, yes, I took all those photographs.
What do the sugar sheep represent?
They're just little whimsical animals. If you go to, when you're in Potswara and you're buying sugar skulls, oh my word, they have like chickens and turkeys and donkeys and pigs. They have every type of animal. And I mean, I love shopping for the little animals. They have cats, dogs. It's just a little whimsical tradition that they just like to make all these little figurines out of sugar. It's just, it's a form of folk art, Mexican folk art.
Susan asks, did anyone consider taking photographs of the altars and graves as sacrilegious?
I don't think so.
Yeah.
So I didn't pick that up.
Are the photos you shown in the presentation also the photos in your book?
Yes, the majority of the photographs in the presentation are in my book, but I added some more because when we did the book, we decided to do 30 photos for each community. And so some of the photos that I had selected got edited out. So I added some that I thought were important, like showing the mariachis in the cemetery in Wackachula, which was not in the book. And then the photograph of the woman drinking the beer and the mariachi musician behind her. I love that photo. So I put that in, added that. So I just wanted to add some filler to coincide with my text.
Yeah. Do you have plans for the photos to end up in an archive?
My photographs already are in the archive. I have gifted all my photographs taken in Mexico to the National Museum of Mexican Art in Chicago. So I'm really happy. My photographs have a home, and that's the biggest Mexican museum in the country, because I want my work to be preserved, and so they will be preserved. And they currently have around 10,000 of my photographs in their archive that I've gifted to them.
That's awesome. Thank you for archiving them. It's very important, especially now that Coco's changed it.
We don't know what's going to happen. I mean, I photograph other things other than Day of the Dead in Mexico. I photograph fiestas. I don't know. All the fiestas that I photographed in the past were all canceled this year. Who knows if they're going to come back and be the way they were prior to the pandemic? No one knows. So these photographs have some cultural value because some of these traditions, we don't know what's going to happen. So
Yeah.
it's important that they are preserved, because who knows what's going to come about in the future.
Let's see. Will there be a documentary about this? If not, there should be.
Well, I'm not a filmmaker.
Yeah.
I'm a still photographer. So my book is really my piece of art that contributes to the celebration of life.
What is the time span of this book?
The photos in this book are from 2009 through 2018.
Okay. It's a long span of time. Are you concerned that the wonderful job you did in documenting and photographing the various customs and traditions into the book, which may have wide distribution, will have the undesired effect of bringing more boorish and uninformed tourists to these small villages?
That's a good question. I don't know. I don't know that answer. I don't think my book is going to have the impact that the movie Coco did. I mean, you cannot compete with a corporation like Disney. And for some of you, I don't know how many of you saw the movie Coco, but I mean, the movie made millions. It won the Academy Award for Best Animated Film. It won the Academy Award for Best Song. And then there was a James Bond movie a few years back called Spectre. And the opening scene in the movie was a Day of the Dead parade in Mexico City. Now, prior to this James Bond movie, there was never a procession in Mexico City. And once that movie came out, now Mexico City has a procession because of the James Bond movie. So you have to understand the influence of the United States really is powerful. And I didn't expect Coco to change Santa Fe to Laguna into like a tourist destination. I was in shock. I did not expect to see that happen. But you cannot, I think that the movies have a much greater impact because more people go to the movies than they read books.
Rosalie asks, is it important to speak fluent Spanish when visiting?
I'm not fluent in Spanish, and I know enough Spanish to get by. So I think the most important thing is to show respect for the people. If you look at the photographs of the people making food and decorating their altars, they look completely relaxed. Most indigenous people do not like being photographed. And I went into their homes. I had a hostess in Teotihuacan del Valle, and I told her that I would like to photograph the home altars. And I worked on that project for 4 years. And I said, would you find people who are willing to let me come through their homes and photograph their altars? So she introduced me to all of them. And she set up a time schedule so they knew what time I was going to come to their homes and take the photographs. And I told all of them that they would get photographs back in return for letting me come into the homes and take the photos. So they look very comfortable. And like I said, I didn't pose anybody. I didn't tell them what to do. I just walked in the home and I just waited till I saw like what I thought was a great photograph, and I took the photograph. And once I felt that I had documented that, I had an appointment to move on to the next home. So the people were very comfortable with me coming into the home. But I think the most important thing is having respect. You don't go in there like the bull in the china shop. You don't tell them what to do, and you don't art direct. I just let them be themselves.
Okay. I'm going to just go through a couple more questions before we wrap up. Let's see. Is it disrespectful to be married on Day of the Dead? I was married on November 2nd, so I can have my family there with me.
You know, I can't answer that question. And I've been in Mexico for 27 years. I've never seen any wedding take place in Mexico during Day of the Dead. So I really don't know the answer to that question. I just know from my personal experience, I've never seen any weddings taking place.
Let's see. Sorry, there's a lot of questions. I want to get to important ones, but let's see. Does the Catholic Church fully embrace these traditional ceremonies? Do you sense there is a coexistence of beliefs?
Well, let's put it this way. The Aztecs had death rituals on their calendar. Day of the Dead was not. It was on the 9th month of the Aztec calendar, and the 10th month of the Aztec calendar. And the first event was the Fiesta for the Little Dead, and that took place in the 9th month. And then in the 10th month, you had the Fiesta for the Big Dead. So these were festivals that took place in the summertime. They took place from July to August. Now, when the Spanish arrived in Mexico, they saw that death rituals are very important for the indigenous people. So they thought in order to help them convert over to Catholicism, they would let them keep their death rituals, except they would switch them to All Saints Day, November 1st, and All Souls Day, November 2nd. So the Catholic Church lets them do it. There's a discussion in my book where I'm interviewed with the visual arts director, Cesario Romero from the National Museum of Mexican Art. And he said that the Pope doesn't really think that the souls are released from the land of the dead and they come back to the land of the living, but he lets them do it because it's a part of their culture. So I would say the Catholic Church doesn't fully embrace the custom, but it's important to indigenous people, so they allow them to have their death rituals and their celebrations.
Okay, and several have asked where can they find the book? You can find it at local bookstores like Collected Works. They have some copies, but you can also order through them. While the Museum of International Folk Art gift shop is closed right now, you can purchase the book at the Museum of New Mexico Foundation's website. If you just search Ann Murdy on the Path of Marigolds, you'll find multiple vendors online that are selling it. And it's available to check out here at the public library. Any final thoughts or comments from you, Ann?
No, I just, this is something I'm very passionate about. Like I said, it's one of the most beautiful experiences I have ever witnessed in my life. I have done a lot of traveling around the world, but this to me is just a magical, magical experience. You have to really be there in person to see the beauty of walking in a cemetery at night that's only lit by candle, and it's very peaceful. The evening celebrations, maybe in the afternoons, they're eating and drinking, but in the night time, it's really it's quiet. It's very, very quiet. It's very serene. On the island of Picanda, all I heard were the church bells ringing. I almost felt guilty taking photographs because I didn't want to, infringe on the people, but I don't use a flash when I take photographs at night, it's really a wonderful experience. And I think it's a lovely way to honor our loved ones who are no longer with us. It really is cathartic and healing. And I think it's wonderful.
Thank you so much, Ann. I think it's wonderful too. Your photographs are beautiful, inspiring. I'm going to make altars for my grandparents. And I definitely want to send this book on to family members. Thank you so much for being with us tonight and sharing all of your beautiful work and wisdom. And everyone else, have a great night. Be sure to check out the Santa Fe Public Library calendar for more of our virtual events. Tomorrow we have Ben Radford to talk about the Haunted Chemo Theater. We have Michael McGarity joining us on the 27th. Jane Phillips, our local Ghostbuster and psychic, will be with us on the 29th. Lots of fun stuff happening this month. And thanks for kicking it off, Ann.
Well, thank you so much. And if you ever want me to come back again, I'd be more than happy to speak.
We'd love to have you. Stay safe, everyone. Read books and have a good night.
Hasta luego.